Hello and welcome to the Mostly Star Wars podcast. We have our normal trifecta of hosts. We have Tyler
Hello, how's it going?
and we have Quinton
Hello there.
and we have myself, Josiah. We're super excited to talk about all things Return of the Jedi. And without further ado, I think we should jump right in. We're about a year after the last movie. So that's kind of the time between the two. And basically, we have with the crawl, we have Luke going to save Han. The Empire is working on a new weapon that's even more powerful than the Death Star.
Gotta always have another Death Star. Can never have too many Death Stars.
Yeah, never.
The Emperor's a fan of mass destruction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I love the beginning of this movie. They do so great at the beginning of the Star Wars movies. Always, it doesn't matter how much time is in between. As soon as that crawl drops and you start getting into the world of Star Wars, you're there. And I love the beginning of this when you see like the remains of the Death Star. It just looks so cool. And I mean, there's so much like artwork, shirts, merchandise, and stuff with the partly destroyed Death Star because it's so amazing. It's an iconic look.
I like the Death Star here, the Death Star 2.
Yeah.
I like how they basically were like, we don't need to build the full station. We just need the parts to make the weapon work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what that was the point of the shield, was because, well, guess anyone can just fly right in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wasn't nearly complete. It was operational, but it wasn't anywhere near complete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I like.
So
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say. So as we kind of creep in and you start seeing like the Imperial ships, it's so cool to see like multiple different Imperial ships, kind of showing like the multifaceted, how many different types of ships there are, and immediately we kind of get Vader, which is exciting because we knew that it was coming to a climax, but we have Vader, and not only getting us excited right at the beginning of the movie, but he also surprises everybody on the battle station.
The opening scene is just his shuttle landing on the Death Star, and then he talks to the Admiral there, and he's like, hey, you better get this thing done because the Emperor's on his way. And I love the line. I love the line of, the Emperor is not as forgiving as I am. And I was like, didn't you just kill 3 of your admirals in the last movie just for not getting the job done? And you're threatening him by telling him the Emperor is not as forgiving. What is he gonna do?
Yeah.
Torture you?
Well,
before he kills you? Probably, yeah.
But yeah, and I love that too, because as soon as he lands, right, you already have him and you get that close up of his face, and he does like that deep swallow, like okay, now this guy could kill me, basically, and so then, like you're saying, then he tops it off. The Emperor's coming, and he's like stumbling, fumbling over his words, like, what, the Emperor's coming here? Oh, okay. Like I feel like
we should double our efforts.
He had a little bit like more, I guess, like confidence or an ease to talk to Vader, like kind of explaining what was going on. But as soon as he said the Emperor's coming, it really put the fear in him.
Yeah, he was not excited about that. He already looks nervous talking to Vader.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, everyone in chat there? Thanks for stopping by.
Rebecca, this is definitely a favorite. This is my favorite Star Wars movie as well, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much in this movie too to talk about. But yeah, just that opening scene with Vader, and they're like, well, we should double our efforts, and just like everyone's got to work now because the Emperor is getting tired of this rebel force. He wants to see the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love like just kind of putting yourself back in the time, like where this movie first comes out, right? And so you kind of end at the end of the last movie wondering what's going to happen next with so many of the characters, and you don't have to wait long because you have R2D2 and C3PO go to Jabba's palace, right? And then that's where you get the big reveal that Han is actually a display in carbonite still. So
yeah. He's like, I like my Captain Solo where he is.
yeah.
Jabba's great.
Mm-hmm.
Jabba's a great villain.
Mm-hmm.
He's not very layered, but I like the design of the character. And I know if you like watch some of the behind the set stuff, didn't they have like, was it 6 or 8 guys controlling him inside?
Right. Yeah.
Well, they had a smaller person that would like control the tail, and then like his eyes and his mouth and everything was controlled with servos and radios, and so there was like guys controlling. One guy would control the eyes, one guy control the mouth, other guys
Mm-hmm.
control the arms. Like everything was there was a lot of people involved in bringing that character to life.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Seth says all of Jabba's palace, the sail barge stuff, is peak Star Wars, and I completely agree because it gets a wonder that you're in a different universe, kind of not a lot different than the cantina scene in A New Hope, where you're like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
we are definitely in a different universe here. We're not in Kansas anymore. And so yeah,
And
it makes it feel special.
Yeah, I love the like the sail barge because it's like such another world, but there's kind of like throwbacks because even like the Imperial Navy has lots of connections like to a navy that we know here on Earth, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's like all those kind of connections, and I love this one because it draws lots of connections to like space pirates, right? Like, and they even have basically a walk the plank. They got like a motorized plank
Right.
that they have them, and why do they have that on there? This isn't the first time, right? So it's definitely like kind of like they have these people walk the plank, and like instead of like sharks, it's a sarlacc. So yeah.
I think it also is representative of kind of what Obi-Wan had said in A New Hope, that it was more an uncivilized time, and they're maybe going back to stuff like that, more barbaric stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, you have like in Attack of the Clones, the arena scene. That's just a execution for everyone to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of no different than like the Romans did in the Colosseum.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what this is. Although this is more like Jabba's just twisted and evil, and he wants to get his giggles out of making them jump into the Sarlacc pit. And honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would be that entertaining if they'd all just jumped off. That all just
Yeah.
got swallowed and they drive away.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he tried the
Yeah.
Rancor and it didn't work, so they had to try something else. The
Yeah, for
Rancor pit
sure.
is kind of like the arena on Geonosis in ways.
Mm-hmm.
And
So then we have Leia, Lando, and Chewie, basically all undercover, like bust in there. And I thought it was a cool way, especially like, for all of us who've watched the movie, 100 times, hundreds of times, it doesn't have that same suspense, but I still love it. You kind of think back to, you just put yourself in that movie, and, like the suspense of who is this person, even when Han gets out. I love that part so much because the fact that he can't see just adds like all that much more. So he can only like feel, which she's in disguise, and then he can only hear, which her voice is disguised. So it was such a cool reveal, like for Han himself, and then everybody watching the film, obviously.
mm-hmm.
I always liked that you got to the outfit for Leia in Battlefront. That was a cool one, especially when you can run around Jabba's palace.
Her bounty hunter outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Rebellica says the fact that Luke picked up a skull in the Rancor pit to close the door, yeah, I always gave her shivers as a kid. Yeah, I mean, the Rancor pit is one of the coolest scenes. It's just another reminder of like where you are. This universe is crazy. There's big monsters. There's
Mm-hmm.
everything you can imagine in this universe.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
think we're gonna get into it a little bit more, but so also then we have Luke for the first time. First he's, in like a recording, right, with R2D2. And, you kind of like get a sense that, you know, of what he's trying to do. He's trying to negotiate, right? But as soon as he gets there, right, and he comes in and he force chokes somebody,
Yes.
and he's in all black
The
too. So
the
on top
whole
of that,
the whole movie is basically leading up to what Luke's decision is, where he's grown, where he's getting his power, and his choices that he has to make. And even from this very simple escape scene or set piece, uh, you see what Luke is becoming. Because yeah, you think, well, Yoda told him in uh, Empire that the Jedi use their force for knowledge and defense, never for attack. I think choking someone is attacking them.
right?
I mean, technically, he's defending his friends or trying
Hmm.
to.
Yeah.
Does that not count?
Yeah. I love it because it also, like, now, like, I've always loved that scene, like him coming in, and you really start to see like this, this confidence come out of him. And it is why for a long time he was, my favorite Star Wars character ever. And I think that's part of it. But I think it also, now that we got to see him, later in the Mandalorian, right? and
Hmm.
in or yeah, like now that we're seeing him like in some more film and kind of like around that time, like I love that, because that's kind of like the Luke that I guess really drew me to him, like having like that confidence that he didn't have, in the first like 1.5 movies.
So I'm gonna skip a little ahead here, because just for a minute, because Rebecca said that she has a theory that Luke's costume changes over the trilogy indicate his loss of innocence. And
Hmm.
I don't necessarily know about Empire, but I do know, and I've heard it. I think it was Empire of Dreams. It's a documentary. It's George and them basically say that his outfit for this movie in particular is the reason he's in all black. It represents his tempt towards the dark side and his tendency to
Mm-hmm.
go with his emotions, and it indicates that he will have to make a choice whether to go to the dark side or not. And so that's why after you see him finally make that choice and he starts getting attacked with the force lightning by the Emperor, the little sleeve pops open and it's white on the inside, and
Mm-hmm.
it's supposed to represent, that choice he made. But then when it pops out, you see that he was always good on the inside. That's what the costume there for Luke was supposed to represent during this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, and I could totally see that. I think this movie, out of all of them, because he already kind of has leanings towards the dark side. Not that he wants to he wants to be dark, or he wants to be a Sith, but you know, even like what Yoda said, that he was old in some of the ways that, I guess his tendencies in his personality kind of led towards someone who is force sensitive going to the dark side. His impatience, and even like his anger, fear, things like that. So I feel like this movie, out of all of them, it made the most sense to give us like that conflict, or see that conflict in him, which is interesting because he tells Vader that he can sense his, you know, kind of the going back and forth, in Vader's mind. But for us as the audience, we can kind of see the same for Luke.
I think that's kind of what Luke is getting at too, because he knows the conflict that he's facing, so he's kind of
Yeah.
putting on that. He's like, well, you're my father. I'm sure you were once a Jedi. I'm sure you have the same conflicting ideas.
Yeah.
And uh, so I was just watching a video from So Uncivilized. They got a really good piece of how Luke is different, and is a different character than your typical hero, because the person that Luke wants to be and the person he is are two different people, really.
Yeah.
And you see in A New Hope, he makes impatient decisions and all this stuff, and it works out for him. But then you see in Empire that he's acting the same way, but it all goes downhill. And so you start to understand that, and he's getting these warnings. He got the warning about, you could turn into Darth Vader. Watch out in the cave.
Yeah.
But he never took that to heart.
Yeah.
I don't think he takes that to heart until Vader tells him he's his father, and he realizes he's not destined to become a Jedi. He's destined to become Vader. And he's starting to realize his impulsive behavior and his emotional reactions aren't leading him to be the hero that he wants to be, but they're actually leading him to be Vader. And that's what he has to battle throughout this movie. It is that, because I wrote it, okay, so Yoda says anger, fear, and aggression are the dark side. And Luke uses all of these in this movie. He'd already used it in Jabba's palace before he visited Yoda. He uses it again a few times when he's fighting Vader. It's ultimately the conflict within a person. George isn't writing characters that are inherently bad, or just bad guys, or just good guys. Yeah. He's trying to represent the choice that you have to make to be good or to be bad. And that is ultimately what the climax of this movie is that choice.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing that's important to note is Luke isn't always the savior. A lot of times he's getting saved himself, which is interesting, because many movies, the hero is the ultimate hero, like 100% hero. He saves the day. It all depends on him. And many times it's his friends that end up saving Luke when he tries to do what he thinks is right. But, in the end, either fails or needs to rely on someone else, for the ultimate goal of doing what is right.
Exactly. And kind of what I was talking about, Rebecca mentions it, the scene where he cuts off Vader's hand, and then he looks at his own hand and sees, it turns out that destroying Vader and becoming Vader are the same thing.
Yeah.
And so, and he sees that and realizes what he is doing, and that's when he makes the choice. He throws his weapon away. And just as you mentioned, that he has to, in order to defeat Vader, he sacrifices himself and relies on Vader to save him. Right. And that in turn saves Anakin's soul.
Yeah.
And that's why the Star Wars in general, just having this conversation has got me goosebumps and stuff. But it's when you really start to think about the deeper things that, like, George is trying to tell you and teach, and the lessons you can take from Star Wars. And that's exactly like in Empire, he basically sacrifices. He doesn't sacrifice himself, but he gives himself up to be saved, and he begs for Leia to come save him.
Yeah.
In A New Hope, while he does destroy the Death Star, he does give in to reliance on the computers and relies on the Force, and also Han saves him. So he's always it's more so, it's faith. It's putting faith in your friends and trusting them as well. What it really is that you can trust your friends and you can have faith that they will come up for you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry I got a little off track, but that's just, you know.
Yeah, I know.
It's
This
like my
movie
favorite part of
is
the
so
movie.
deep, and it's a culmination of George's vision, and so it's such an epic movie because of that. It was the end of the Skywalker saga for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people it is. It to this day, this is the end of the Skywalker saga. If some people don't count the next movies.
we like all Star Wars here, right, guys?
Yes.
So I can find something in all Star Wars, which to me, I mean, if you really want to, you want to go there, this talk about Luke and his self-sacrificing ways, people say they ruined Luke Skywalker in the sequel trilogy, and I'll argue that The Last Jedi understands what Luke was, or what Lucas was getting at, and the way the Luke character is. He stands down an entire army and doesn't hurt anyone.
Yeah.
Doesn't harm anyone. Doesn't, no act of violence whatsoever. The most Jedi thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
If you really think about what the Jedi are supposed to stand for, then that is the most Jedi act ever shown in any of the movies, really. And it's that self-sacrificing. Wait, even. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say something, but I'm also like, well, it's kind of off topic. That's about a different movie, so I don't think we need to.
Yeah, I got a little off topic, but I'm just saying that that was kind of in character, and you can see through the original trilogy.
And we're trying to keep these a little bit shorter too, so we probably should stay on the same movie versus jump into another one. But so in that, instead of continuing to talk about the next one, so basically back to the movie. So I love the banter and the dialogue, of Han and Luke as well. So Han, he's been in carbonite for a year. He's still partially blind and everything. And I love when Luke says, hey, I used to live here. And then he's like, yeah, kid, you're going to die here. I don't know. I just love that. For one, it's funny Luke out of anything decides to be like, hey, did you know I used to live here? It's just really funny, especially, they're about to all basically die. And and then on top of it, Han's response, I always love that. It's a perfect spot for humor. Everybody's kind of talking about the new Thor movie, no spoilers, but about the humor in it. Some people don't like it and it's put in wrong places. But in this movie, I just love it. It's perfect timing for humor.
I like one of the lines at the beginning there that I really like is when he kills the Rancor and they pull out Chewie and Han out of the cells, and Han goes, together again, huh? How we doing? And Luke goes, same as always. That bad, huh?
Yeah.
When I'd never really thought about that line that you mentioned earlier, Josiah, about Luke saying, I used to live here, But when I was watching it this time, I was like, well, I think he would know that. He picked you up here a few years ago, and that's where your journey together started.
Yeah, that's
on
true.
This planet.
Yep.
Your entire life's changed vastly in that moment when Han picked up some cargo. I think he would remember where he picked you up.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
100%. Yeah, I like what Seth just said. That he said when Han is unfroze and saved by Leia in this movie, man, it was a game changer for me as a kid. For once, it wasn't the damsel in distress. Sometimes men need to be saved too. Hey, as our resident Nintendo guy, that actually would be a great game. How about Princess Peach has to save Mario? Anyways, yeah, let's not get off topic again.
Yeah, no, I like that point. That's a good point, though. I mean, no one. They rescue Leia, but the second Rey in A New Hope, but the second she's rescued, she's like, okay, I'm in charge. Let's go.
Yeah.
So no one rescue. Leia doesn't need rescuing.
Yeah.
And she can hold her own with any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why. Okay, that's off topic. Sorry. Different movie.
Yeah, I like that line too, Rebellica. Rebellica said, I'm out of it for a little while and everyone gets a delusions of grandeur. I love that one too.
Yeah. Because he's like, oh, he's a Jedi now?
Yeah. Oh, man, we have to bring that up. I was going to mention that. I kind of wanted to see your guys' thoughts on it. So when Luke finally gets before Jabba, he claims to be a Jedi Knight. Right. And then later in the movie, Yoda says he's not even a Jedi. So I thought that was kind of interesting. He's like, I'm a Jedi Knight, right? And then later Yoda is like, you're not even a Jedi yet.
Yeah, and as well, Luke calls himself that, but Jabba says he's no Jedi.
Yeah,
and that is why that scene, kind of what we were just talking about, all that choice, is when he throws his lightsaber away. The first person to respect him as a Jedi is the Emperor. He's the first one to call him a Jedi.
That's true.
He says, the Emperor goes, "So be it, Jedi." And because Yoda had said you need to face Vader in order to become a Jedi, and Jabba said he was no Jedi. So the only one, and it's that choice right there that he becomes a Jedi, really, is his self-sacrificing way. And even the Emperor acknowledges it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seth says, who are you? Someone who loves you very much. Yeah. I always thought it was kind of funny because half of that scene is in her her masked voice. Yeah. And it sounds funny. And then yeah, she takes her helmet off and they smooch and whatever.
And whatever. This is a rated G podcast.
Yeah. And then Vader starts laughing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, and then we never even talked about we have the amazing jams by the band, right?
Yes. That's been changed many times. That's one of the scenes that's been changed a lot throughout this different special editions and whatever. But again, I think it's fine. I like it. I enjoy that scene. Again, it's just like we had talked about earlier. It's more of the wonder in the different universe and everything. And that's kind of why I liked a lot of the cantina scenes from Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett, is you kind of get that same feel of being in a different universe there.
One thing I kind of thought of when I was watching it was when Luke shows up and he's talking to Bib Fortuna and he's using Jedi mind trick on him, right?
Yeah.
And right before Bib, wakes up Jabba, Luke tells him that he'll be rewarded for this.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to rule for, a good number of years. So
yeah,
I guess he kind of didn't get rewarded for waking up Jabba.
Yeah, until Boba Fett works his way out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I always love that. I always love that line too in the Boba Fett, where? And then he's just hits him in the back with like a gaffy stick or something, and he just flies off, and he's like, oh. It's a good thing he's not dead, because that's a real cheesy death.
Yeah. I love Boba Fett in here. The Boba Fett, like, he's really interesting. Like, the character kind of expands a lot from just being kind of like there, real stern, stoic, mysterious. This one, they give him a little bit of character because, I think he like walks by some of the girls, maybe like the singers or dancers
he taps her on her cheek.
Yeah, he like, like it's like kind of like a flirty thing, and the girls like it, like, oh man, this is like, the top of the top bounty hunter type thing. And Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, like how they gave him a little bit of, like a bad boy and the girls like him, kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Uh, I think it's always funny. Well, we talked about Leia not needing to save anyone. She's the one that kills Jabba. Like, she chokes him out. Like, no,
Yep.
she didn't need saving.
Yeah.
She killed Jabba herself.
Oh
And
man.
but what I like, I always find funny is when R2 pushes 3PO off the barge. They're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
come on, let's go." And then I was like, "Oh," and R2 forgets that he can fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's buried in the
Exactly.
sand. We're like, "Hey,
Mhm.
R2, why didn't you use those rockets there, eh?"
Mhm.
I mean, he's like 25 years older than he was last time he used those. Maybe they don't work anymore. They could be full of sand, gits
Yeah,
and everything.
Mhm.
it does.
Mhm.
Uh,
Seth mentioned it's ironic that Boba Fett got killed by a gaffy stick, and then he says, "Killed with a gaffy stick, reborn with a gaffy stick. It rhymes." It's
yeah,
like
it's like
poetry.
poetry. It rhymes.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%.
That's so
Yep.
funny. That's so funny.
Mhm.
I like.
Okay, so let's see, back into the movie. Now we have the Emperor. He finally lands there, right? So the Emperor gets there, and I just, man, the Emperor is such a good character, in these movies, because he's such like a master manipulator, right? And I love like the interactions that he has with Vader. He doesn't ever, there's few times, but there's not very many times where he like openly rebukes him or says
Mm-hmm.
you're bad or you did this wrong, or he's always like respectful, and like he's just boosting Vader's ego, right? Giving him praises like, oh, good job, Vader, like, oh, you did a great job, and he's done that since he was a child, right? And that's how he can continue to manipulate and control him, by saying like, oh, you're doing good, which is what Anakin has always craved from everybody
Mm-hmm.
that he's been around, is like that approval and that praise. Though as well, he needs that praise to say, hey, you're doing great, hey, you're powerful. And so I love how he continues to use that, but then you can see the manipulation, and 100% at the very end, when he turns that admiration and praise, from Vader to Luke. Then he's like, yeah, kill him, like, you're better than him, you're more powerful. And it kind of does a drawback, because when the Emperor comes, he tells him, that only we together can change, like, can turn him. He's too powerful for you alone or I alone. We both need to join up together to turn him. So once again, it's kind of, he's giving like a false sense of humility. I can't do it on my own, and then he's not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
telling Vader like, you're too weak. It's more like saying neither one of us can, like, we need to do it together. Once again, it's just that full manipulation, because the Emperor knows that his end result is whoever's more powerful, he'll take him. He doesn't care if Vader kills Luke or Luke kills Vader. He just wants whoever's the most powerful. So
Is it
Yeah.
kind of like in the last movie, Vader tried it by himself and failed, and then in this movie, the Emperor is like, "This time we will do it together."
mhm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just
That's
like
great.
Obi-Wan in the fight with.
Yeah,
It's poetry. It
and
rhymes.
I love the contrast
Yep.
too. Like when but when the Emperor comes, and then you also get to see like the royal guards, right?
Yeah, I
The
wanted
Imperial guards, and they're all in red, and it
to
just,
bring that
oh
up
man, that's such a beautiful scene too.
because Rebecca mentioned it. They're crayons. He loved the Royal Guard costume. I'm looking at 'cause I got
Yeah.
the movie pulled up. I'm looking at it right now, and you've got stormtroopers in white, Imperial officers in black and gray. The whole floor is black, covered by all these bright white lights in this
Mm-hmm.
hangar, and then these bright red guards walk out. The
Yeah.
massive contrast in color there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Beautiful.
as we've seen, George uses that color to represent the thoughts and the evil and the, red.
Yeah, red
Red.
lightsabers are bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple as that, but also you can think about it. What happens when someone gets angry? You know, they said, "Yo, you're turning red," and so that kind of represents the anger. The red is the anger that is, uh, that's what it represents. But I also wanted to point out, like you were talking about the Emperor, Ian
Hmm.
McDermott is amazing.
Oh
He was
yeah.
on, he was only like 30 years old when they did this movie,
Hmm.
something like that. He's like 4 years younger than Harrison Ford. It's ridiculous, and
Hmm.
just how well he looks. And
Yeah.
but I think it was great. The reason they did it this way, and the reason I think George wanted to show that is, wow, his power is has made him. He's a old man who doesn't look great. But if
Hmm.
you notice, you don't really see him limping around. I mean, he might have a cane, but it's almost all for show.
Yeah.
He's
So he would have
not
been 39 when that movie came out.
okay.
So yeah, you're saying 30s.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, he's not immobile. You don't
Yeah.
get the feeling that he's immobile in any way whatsoever. He looks old, but he's so powerful, and
Yeah.
that's really it comes across clear.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to the power, right, of the Force. Who can wield it? Who can control it? Because there's, as we continue in the movie, now we're basically to Luke back with Yoda, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's where everybody, at the time, and in the Star Wars universe, get the bomb drop that he's 900. Everyone's like,
Hmm.
whoa, 900, Yoda's like 900 years old. It's just kind of
Well,
like you get that, it's said earlier, but it kind of really like drives on the point again, because then he says, that strong in the Force I am, but not that strong. Like
hmm
I'm not strong enough to keep myself alive any longer.
but he's accepted that, which
Hmm.
is another contrast into the Emperor, where the Emperor doesn't want to die. He's kind of more selfish in the way he wants to rule everyone forever.
Yeah.
He wants all power forever.
Hmm.
And yeah, sorry, I was distracted reading. Yeah, okay. So Seth says the angry red is such a perfect contrast to Luke's green too, that color represents harmony and growth. And that is something as well. I know they've done studies where certain colors have a certain effect on people and their mental how they
Mm-hmm.
see those. And red does trigger a more angry response, whereas green is the most neutral, most peaceful color.
Hmm.
And
Which
so,
is
which,
it's funny that it works out that way, but
yes,
there was a completely
yes,
different purpose as to why his lightsaber was green. Do you know why,
yes.
Josiah?
I
Why it
think
was green?
they brought it up sometime. I can't remember
So
now though.
it's because George was worried that a blue lightsaber would disappear into the background of the blue sky on the sail barge fight, and
Yeah.
that the visual effects wouldn't be able to do blue. So that's why they
Hmm.
switched it to green.
He's like,
Yeah,
just
I
change it
knew
to
there
green.
was something. Yeah, there was something along the lines of like the green screen or something like that.
But
Yeah.
I love that because it opens up to the possibility of all these different kinds of colors of lightsabers.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, like
for sure.
purple.
Yeah.
I guess
Yep.
there's yellow too now.
Hmm. Yeah, and yellow, for like temple
Wasn't
guards,
there was quite a
sentinels.
few in Fallen Order, wasn't there? A few more color options than just that, even?
In you mean the High Republic or?
No, Fallen Order.
Oh yeah,
Jedi
but
Fallen Order.
there you could get orange and some other colors in Jedi Fallen Order. There was a few other colors, I think.
Yeah.
And then you also now have Ahsoka's white.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting off topic though.
Yeah, okay, we're off topic. So basically we're back with Yoda. We kind of already talked about that Yoda was, giving some final wisdom, right? So, he's talking about well, for one, he tells him he's not a Jedi yet. And then, almost immediately after that, then he tells him or confirms to him that Darth Vader is his father, which, he had already heard it, but he needed someone to confirm it who already knew him. Right. So I think that was, like huge for Luke at the moment, to hear that, because then it's almost like a betrayal, that he felt from people who knew and never said, especially from Obi-Wan. And I think this is also like what we talked about at the beginning, like destiny, right? You were talking about from that video.
Mm-hmm.
So civilized or whatever it's called is.
So
Yeah,
uncivilized, yeah.
So uncivilized,
I'll find it and I'll share the link in the chat if anyone want to check out that video later.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually really good. Yeah, I recommend anybody to watch it if you haven't. But it starts talking about Yoda's talking about destiny because he's talking about the line we were talking about, the anger and fear and aggression, that once you start down that, it will dominate your destiny. And that's kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about Luke's destiny. We're talking about Anakin's destiny, or in this case right now, Vader's destiny. And I love the point too where he says, don't underestimate the powers of the Emperor or suffer the same fate. And it's really interesting when the more you kind of think about that, because you can kind of take it as, he's talking about Anakin's fate. So, Anakin underestimated him and that led him to where he's at. But also, as we know, later from the prequels, Yoda also, maybe not per se underestimated him, but he also went, toe to toe with the Emperor, and failed. And
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that Yoda thought he could win. I don't think that he would have went solo if he didn't think he could win. So I feel like in some ways he was speaking from, personal experience, which once again shows the power of the prequels because, they compound these amazing movies that came out, 20 years prior. So yeah, I love that. And, finally we get hit with the bomb that there's another Skywalker.
So I just want to touch on that part of the don't underestimate the powers of the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're watching it, you're thinking of from Luke's perspective of just his physical power, his force powers. But I think what he's more meaning is the way he treats people and the way he manipulates people is even stronger than his ability to use the Force. And you can almost see that. You can see that in the way that Vader is acting during their fight. He's literally doing the same manipulations. He's like, well, give in to your anger, and if you won't join, maybe your sister will. And so he's just trying to feed it. And then he says, Luke, that the only way to save your friends is to give in to the dark side. Mm-hmm. And so Vader's telling him the same stuff that the Emperor has used on him. That's how much it's influenced Vader to this point. And so you see him trying to do that, and that's where the manipulation comes from. Like Rebecca said, master politician and manipulator. And so you can see the effects that it's taken on Vader. And so if you think about what Yoda is saying is don't underestimate those, because realistically, it almost works too. Mm-hmm. It's right at that edge.
Yeah. And if you think about like Vader's perspective, even right now, because, you could also debate on whether or not Vader felt like it was the end of his life as well, no matter the outcome here. And so if he also understood the ways of the Sith and understood that his son could basically take his place, and maybe his son would finally be able to overthrow the Emperor, and so all of those things are actually kind of interesting, as well too, like when you kind of think about this kind of battle. And the confliction that he has in his mind, knowing that it is, his blood, it's his son, right? So I think that is definitely kind of something that you could think about when you're coming into this. But going back to where we are in the movie, then Rebecca brought it up too. She said he definitely confronted Obi-Wan in the next scene, and I love it, because
Mm-hmm.
no matter, it's one of those things like, I'm doing this to protect you, but either way, when you lie, whether it's a white lie or not, it is going to come back around. And so Obi-Wan, gets
I
confronted, with the protection that he was trying to do for Luke.
I like that part because everyone always tries to point that out. Well, oh, this is a plot hole because he said this and this and this, and then they just said a certain point of view, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you guys did you watch the Return of the Jedi? Because Luke says a certain point of view. He calls him out. He just says,
Mm-hmm.
"What? You mean you were lying?"
Yeah.
So it's not
but
really a
he?
plot hole, and
He wasn't
he's really
lying.
not. He's really not. He's just not.
Because from his
He's not.
knowledge, the last time that we know he saw Vader, Vader said that he killed Anakin. That's what
Mm-hmm.
Obi-Wan knows. Obi-Wan doesn't think there's any good left in him. So as
Yeah,
far as
because he
Obi-Wan
uses the
knows,
line.
Vader betrayed and murdered his father. That is not.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely accurate.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, from a
Luke
certain point of view.
Luke having a different outlook and a different view on it. He wants to see the good in his father, whether it's there or not. And Obi-Wan's just like, nah, I've given up. There's no good in him.
Mm-hmm.
But if you notice, whenever they say he needs to face Vader, they don't say he needs to kill Vader or he needs to defeat Vader. They just say he needs to face Vader.
Mm-hmm.
That's a completely different thing than It didn't say to be a Jedi you got to go kill a Sith. That's not how it works.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's more like to be a Sith,
I
you
think
got to go kill a Jedi.
that is a really good point, Quinton, because if you think about the times that Obi-Wan faced him, he didn't kill him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he was able to get that peace and, kind of like let it go, I guess you can say, in the times that he did face him. And so whether or not he ended up killing Vader, he would have been able to gain something from it. And so kind of going back to when Obi-Wan is explaining everything, and I love the fact that Luke, once again, he's such a great hero, because from the moments, from the Force, but just in general, like, he wants to see the good in people, right? And so that's his immediate thing, is that there's still good in him. And I love that tie-in throughout the prequels as well. The tie-in from Padme saying that, I just love how there's always like, there's hope, right? There's a little bit of hope that there's enough good in him that they can turn, that they can do the right thing. And then once again, then you have Obi-Wan kind of retaliate with it. He's twisted and evil,
I think,
which, it's, that's where you start getting the conflict, which is amazing watching the movie, because then you as the audience are like, is he just all evil, or is he good? Is there any good in him? And so that's what really, brings it up to the climax at the end.
I think Luke's there seeing what he's going through and his conflict, whether to be evil or not, to whether to be good, wants to be good, but it's so easy to give in to your emotions, and he's realizing that. And I think that's where his hope is in him knowing himself. If he's accepted that he's his father, that means he's at least half of Vader, which means that he's hoping that Vader is having those same conflicts as well. And so that's where the hope comes in, and that's where he puts the faith in Vader to make the right decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Rebecca said that I don't think Obi-Wan ever got over that betrayal, and it was the only way he could face what happened was believing that there was no good left in Anakin. But even in this movie, when Luke is brought before him on Endor, he's trying to say there is good in you, and Vader says Obi-Wan used to think as you do.
Mm-hmm.
So even Vader knows that Obi-Wan had tried to save him and
Mm-hmm.
wanted to think there was still good in him.
Mm-hmm. But not absolute. And I think that's what is the power of family in this movie that is so heartwarming, because, it took Anakin's son to 100% die for his father, basically. He threw his
Yeah.
lightsaber and said, I'm going to die believing that you have good left in you. And that's what changed his heart.
And you're either going to have good left in you, or you're just going to lose one more thing that the dark side has always taken away from you. Everything you ever wanted, the dark side took away from you. So what he was really doing is giving him that one last chance to save something he loved, instead of giving into the dark side and letting it be destroyed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because when
That's
he
what
turned
I was thinking earlier when you guys mentioned that line where Vader said, joining the dark side is the only way to save your friends. Well, Vader joined the dark side, and he lost Obi-Wan, he lost Padme, he lost R2, and like if Luke would have turned to the dark side, he would have lost the rebellion, he would have lost Han, he would have lost his friendship he's have with Lando, and potentially even Leia. So turning to the dark side is not the way to save your friends. It's the way to lose everything, like Vader had.
the dark side takes, it doesn't give.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So during all this time, we have a whole nother part of the movie in Endor. So I also like getting to see Lando taking the lead, in the rebellion, someone who's like a so it's all me type thing, like a haughty and arrogance, that only focusing on himself, now being selfless, taking the lead. And I love it's showing even Han being like, what the heck, what
Look
are you
at
doing?
you, a
This
general.
isn't you. Yeah. So that was amazing. And I love like the fact that he's like, oh, I'm not crazy enough to do that, because they're like, oh, I thought they would have asked you or whatever. And he's like, who said they didn't, but then later we find out that he hasn't even, just as much crazy mission that he's going to lead.
He's playing it off like, oh, who they got to do that. And then and she's like, oh, they're going to lead the strike team. They're going to be down with just a few people by themselves in a secret op, basically, instead of just in the big battle. And Leia's like, oh, I wonder who they got to do that. And he's like, yeah.
I mean, what did he have to be afraid of? He had Rex with him.
I also like this moment as a great character building moment for Han. Because
I think for both of them, for Han and Lando.
Yeah, but what I'm more referencing here is Han says my team is ready, but he doesn't have the pilots, basically,
for the command crew.
The command crew, yeah, the command crew. And Chewbacca speaks up, and you as a viewer, you would just assume that Chewie's going with Han, but Han even said, I know it's rough, and I know you're my best friend, but I'm not speaking for you.
Yeah.
He said, I didn't want to speak for you, and Chewie's like, nope, we're in this together.
Yeah, I think Han was kind of like, last time you risked your life and you didn't even get a medal. So are you sure you really want to do this again?
Well, it's more of it's showing that they're a friendship. It's not like one has more control over the other.
And
of course, they're going to do it together.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's a good comparison, going back to kind of like, space pirates or whatever is, Han is the captain, but Chewie's like his number one. Anyone else on the ship is below them, but Han is kind of calling the shots, but he does have like that, the respect and loyalty to Chewie as well.
Yeah, he's a good leader.
Yeah, he wasn't going to force him to do something that he might not want to do.
Yeah.
And that's what, good leaders follow by example, and that's what he was doing in that moment. And so that's why Chewie was ready to follow him. Because and Chewie also knows that means Han's not the people under his command are not just pawns to be sacrificed. If he's not gonna if no one wants to, he's not gonna make anyone do it. Even the guy who's his most loyal and follows him anywhere, he's not gonna make him do it. That's the kind of leader you want to be under, because he's willing to fight for you as well.
Yeah.
And so those are just really good building moments of, you see, like you said with Lando, and you got these two scoundrels who have also grown up and are now generals in a war.
George does so great with character building, and it's just, I love like each and every one of the characters' arcs. It's so amazing. And sometimes you have to step back and really look and see, how far each and every one of them come. So now we're on Endor and we get to meet the Ewoks.
You're skipping something.
What are we skipping?
Well, you're skipping the part where Han has to say goodbye to the Falcon.
Oh, that is big.
So
not a scratch.
I was just I got the movie pulled up. We were watching this, and there's, they volunteer for the mission, and then it fades to a transition, and it shows the hangar there. And for anybody who's into space battles, this scene is just awesome, because you've got A-wings, X-wings, the Falcon sitting there, and then right at it's panning down, and right at the bottom, just for a short tiny bit, you get to see the B-wing.
I knew you were going
the best ship in Star Wars, and I just had to bring that up. I love that ship; it's so cool. That's like the first little glimpse you get of it, and then you get Han convincing Lando to take the Falcon.
I like that part. Actually, it just reminded me of because kind of what Josiah was just talking about, them being pirates, and he's like, I got it. Would you get going, you pirate?
Yeah,
he calls him a pirate.
So I was thinking, if Lando didn't take the Falcon, would it have just sat there in the hangar? Of that ship? Is it more likely do you want Lando to pilot it, or are you more thinking that ship might get destroyed and the Falcon get blown up anyway? So it's like it's not like it's gonna float there in space.
Yeah.
So you might as well use it, right?
Yeah, and I love Rebecca's kind of bringing up some of the next stuff too. She said Leia realized right away that there's something bothering Luke, and also the fact that Vader detected Luke on the ship. And I was going to touch on that too, because I love, they kind of play on the twin thing, right? Like there's been so many stories of like twins being able to sense when the other one was in trouble or sad, or they get excited at the same time, or two twins live on the other sides of a country and they buy the same outfit or something like that. Like I love hearing those stories, because the connection of being in the womb together and everything like that's so strong. And I love that they play on this, but to an extreme, using the Force, right? Like that they can sense each other a little deeper than that even. And it is kind of interesting, because there's a moment when Luke and Vader both can sense each other, right? But then later in the movie, there's a point when Vader and the Emperor can't feel Luke, right? So it's kind of like
Vader or the Emperor can't feel him, but Vader does. And Vader feels that he was on the shuttle that landed on Endor, but the Emperor doesn't. And I find that interesting, that because he comes and Vader tells him that he was on that shuttle, and the Emperor asks him, "Are your feelings clear on this matter?"
Yeah,
because
that's right.
And we also saw in the Obi-Wan show him kind of chastising him for being so one mind track on Obi-Wan that he kind of distracted him from the real objective. And so whether I find it interesting because whether his thoughts are clear or not, he has learned how to tell the Emperor what he wants to hear.
Yes. Yes. I
And he
love
says,
I love
"They
that.
are clear, my master."
Yes. 100%. And so there's really kind of two things with that. Either the emperor knows and is allowing that to happen to let him think that he's tricking him, like for even a further manipulation, or what I like to believe in my head canon is that there always was a little Anakin. Yeah, that sounds funny to say, but there was always a little good left in Anakin, let's say it that way, from the very beginning, like there was always flashes of him eventually wanting to do the right thing, or thinking that this was a means to an end, kind of. And he was able to, with his power of the force, also trick the emperor, into feeling a certain way, because his goal was always to overthrow the emperor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because he tells Padme that, we can make things the way we are. And I think you are right with there's always been that little spark of good in him, because you see it in Revenge of the Sith when he's killed all the separatists and he's crying, and he has to he sheds a tear, if not fights off a tear in his duel with Obi-Wan at the end there.
Yeah.
And he uses Vader to bury Anakin, metaphorically. And so, yeah, I do believe you're right. There's always that little thing, but he's also, like what I was talking about, learned how to not let the Emperor see that, if that is in fact happening.
Yeah. So I think we got the next part that I wanted to bring out that I always think is so funny too is when they see the trap on Endor and Chewie wants to eat it. It's just like a randomly like spiked animal. And then Han's like, "You're always thinking with your
Chewie,
stomach.
This looks good."
It's just hilarious because he sees it and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll eat this."
And Han, always thinking with your stomach, Chewie.
Yeah.
and then I always think Luke asks Han to try and reach his lightsaber, but I'm always like, is he gonna cut everyone off? What was he gonna do with it?
Well, hoping he'd hand it to Luke.
Yeah.
Not just like, I got this.
Yeah.
But then R2 just cuts it, uses the saw. I love that.
Yeah.
R2's so handy. I wish I had an astromech droid.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I think it's always funny that I was curious, why do the Ewoks worship C-3PO? Because he's gold?
Yeah, so then he's like a deity to them, which I think is hilarious. Yeah, the only thing I could think, that is just that he's like a man, but he's golden.
Yeah. Well, I'm first, what popped into my head was like, are they, because he's artificial, but he's also basically a person?
Yeah.
So do they think that maybe there's just like a spirit inside this mechanical thing? But then I was like, well, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, really, because, I don't know, it just didn't make sense. And I thought it's probably just because he's golden.
Yeah.
He's got that gold, shiny plated armor. I don't know. At least he's not naked.
Yeah.
My parts are
showing. Just showing.
Of that.
I can't forget the speeder bikes too.
Dude,
such a good, especially as a kid. That was the greatest thing.
As I think it's funny, is because as a kid, this was my favorite one, and it was because of like the speeder bikes and stuff, and the big battles and everything. And now I watch this movie and I think the conversations between Obi-Wan and Luke, the conversations between Vader and Luke, the whole entire scene is so much better, I don't want to say, than any of the action pieces
Mm-hmm.
The action there is to like reaffirm what's actually being talked about in all these other scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, so we got like the first like kind of speeder going through the trees, and yeah, it's so awesome. Just kind of seeing like them just busting through all the trees and everything like that. I think, yeah, totally. And it's just like seeing something like high speed like that too. It's just such a cool thing. And anyone obviously who's ridden motorcycles or something like that, you got that
Mm-hmm.
feeling. It's like you're flying. And they literally are. There's no wheels. They're just flying through the trees. Just anybody who loves like that thrill, you just imagine yourself on that, going through there. It's so cool.
And I've been down to the redwoods, and I look up and I was like, I'm on Endor.
It feels like you're there. It's so cool.
Yeah. That feeling, you think, okay, and you imagine like the speeder bikes driving through there, and you're like, this is insane.
Mm-hmm.
But
And then we get Wicket.
Yes.
And yeah, like it's kind of funny because I can't remember which one of you guys before you had mentioned the correlation between Wicket and our friendly Gungan. And so like, and at first I was like, no,
That was me.
yeah. And but like when I watched it this last time, I was really thinking about that, like kind of the correlation between like what they did with Jar Jar's character and really all the Gungans, right? And then what they did with the Ewoks and kind of like Wicket's character. And I do feel like there definitely was like correlations of what they were attempting to do, you know. And I just I think the difference though is all of the Ewoks are kind of similar, right, to Wicket. Like they're all kind of like silly. They're all kind of they're like
he's just
really
a little
primitive.
bit more clumsy, is all.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas like the Gungans, like they're like
Whereas
full
Jar
on
Jar,
military and smart, and then like Jar Jar's like not even, like
he
he's like
got
the
banished for
village
being
idiot.
clumsy.
Yeah, he
Right?
got banished for being clumsy.
Like everybody.
And Wicket's just a clumsy Ewok.
Yeah. And then so like I think really the only like real silly thing that Wicket does is when he has like what they call like the bola or whatever, and he's like spinning it around like because everybody's throwing him and tying him up, and he throws and he wraps himself up. Like and yeah, so then I definitely was like, okay, I could see a little more of the correlation,
more Jar Jar.
But yeah, it was and I think that it was really cool to kind of see them. If you want to do more like comparison with the Gungans, they go there, they ask for the help, they know that they're like a strong military force, and so it's really cool to see that battle. But this one, it was like a surprise. They just like come out of nowhere, and they end up making a huge influence. And so I think that that's kind of really cool on this one, because they end up being like, they're protecting their home world, but they become kind of like the heroes as well on Endor, and it wasn't even really asked of them. They do it.
Yeah, because when you see like the Gungans, they speak basic, they understand everything, and these look, when you first meet them, they feel like uneducated. They're just monsters that live in the trees, little tiny terrifying monsters, and they are if you're a stormtrooper. If you've ever played Battlefront
Ewok
2
Hunt.
and Ewok Hunt, that is one of the funnest modes in the game, but it makes the Ewoks terrifying, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
And
I was gonna say that Rebecca said that Leia gives Wicket a cracker.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's all it takes. He got a cracker, and now he's like, "All right, cool, we're buds forever."
Yeah, and I actually
cracker.
love that, because it's funny, because it's even a little deeper if you think about it, because you then have to contrast Leia and Luke. So Luke ends up meeting someone, on a planet he doesn't know. He doesn't know what the species that live on the planet are like. It ends up being Yoda. But Yoda tries to eat his food, and he's like, "Give me all that. That's my food." You know, he doesn't want to share his food with this random person that he just met. Leia meets this this little guy and is gonna share. You know, like I love that kind of difference
that's a
too.
good comparison. Never thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Ewoks. I think it's just funny because like once they decide, because then Luke and Han and Chewie are captured by them, and Luke tells them, "Okay, C-3PO, tell them that if they don't let us go, you'll become angry and use your magic."
Yeah.
And he starts to float, and I like 3PO when he lands. Oh, I never knew I had it in me.
Yeah.
Like he thought he was doing it all.
Yeah. but once the Ewoks themselves decide that they're friends now, because C-3PO says it anyway, we are now part of the tribe. And like once they do that, they're all super nice, and like one of them will not let Han's leg go. He's just like full on hugging his leg, and he's like trying to get away so he can go talk to Leia.
Yeah.
And then once they decide you're friends, you're friends.
Yeah, they're something a loyal band.
Yeah.
So
and I love
Rebecca
I was just
mentioned
gonna
she
say
posted
the Luke and Leia conversation where Luke finally tells Leia that they're brother and sister and Vader's their father.
Okay, let's pause real quick. Quinton was going to mention, and then we can get to that.
I was just going to say, Rebecca mentioned she posted a picture of the scene of giving Wicket a cracker in the Discord, and that's pretty cool. If you guys haven't checked out our Discord, we appreciate it. It's mostly Star Wars Discord. The link is in the description.
Yeah, she reenacted it, so I can see it there. Yeah, if you want to hang out, like Quinton said, join the Discord. It's in the description.
Yep.
Okay, so go on with what you were saying. Sorry, Josiah.
Oh no, I was just trying to move along because of how far into the movie we are, and then how far into the podcast we are. So I was just moving along. So the next kind of big part of the movie is Luke tells Leia, you know, that she's his sister, and then the even bigger bomb drop that Vader is their father.
Yeah, and it's a real interesting discussion that they have there, because he asks her about her mother, and she just briefly describes it. It's not really even much of she doesn't really say much, but when he tells her, she goes, well, somehow I've always known. And everyone's alarms go off. They've been kissing.
Yeah.
You knew?
You knew? I always get that same feeling when she tells Han at the end of the movie, he's like, he's my brother, and he's just like thinking about all the times she kissed him.
Yeah, everything that's everything that's happened. Yeah, I love his face. It is perfect
He's
in
like,
that situation.
Mind blown.
Yeah, and I even love like right before that too. Like he does such a great job in that moment. But he was like, "You love him, don't you?" And then she's like, "Yes, I do." And he's like, "Okay, well, when he gets here, I'm not going to stand in the way." It's just like, yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, his first mind is blown because he's like thinking about all those times that they kissed, but then he's like, "Oh, score! He's out of the way."
Yeah, no competition.
I think it's interesting because when they have that conversation and he says he actually, I think, does it well, because really what he's doing here is not only is he telling Leia that you're my sister, but at the same time telling you that the bad guy that we've been fighting this entire time is also your dad. And so he starts out, prefaces it with, you know, he's my father, but you're my sister too, and that I have to fight him. And her first initial reaction was, if he can sense you, run away. But that's not how you become a Jedi. Unless you've been a Jedi for a really long time and then lose the really big war. Then you run away. But, and so, yeah, he's basically like, no, I have to face him.
Yeah.
And that's, I really like that moment. And this is, and then after they've done describing that, Han comes out and it's like, what's wrong? And she just doesn't want to say anything. And he goes, oh, well, you could tell Luke. Is that who you could tell? But you can't talk to me. So, but then she's just like, but then she understands his frustration. You can tell. And that's like where she just says, hold me. And they kind of just hug it out. Like, and he understands that, you know, it's not necessarily something they can just talk about right away.
Yeah, and I love there's like a correlation there with like Padme and Anakin too. Like every time I think of that moment, I always remember when like Padme is just like, hold me like you did on Naboo, back on Naboo. You know, like there's a similarity there that, you know, it always reminds me like kind of that same scene.
So, okay, and then so Luke goes off to face Vader, and that's where they have that the conversation. We've kind of touched on it a little bit, where Luke tells Vader that, well, he's accepted the truth that he was once Anakin Skywalker, his father.
Yeah.
He doesn't say Darth Vader is my father. He uses that same logic, the same way that Obi-Wan has been talking, really. He says, no, Anakin is my father, not Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to do his own, not necessarily manipulating, but like just trying to make him understand what he's accepted.
Yeah, I love this interaction, and we had kind of talked about it before the show, but you almost could go through it line by line, you know, and every single line is so amazing. But I love when Luke starts talking back to him, and he says, "Search your feelings, let go of the hate." That this happens so many times in Star Wars, you know, like different characters saying it to each other. But like, I love this, like a son telling his father, you know, search your feelings, you know, and let go of the hate. He can feel the conflict. So he already knows that he has those feelings inside of him. So he's telling him to allow himself to think and to take that side, you know, and that's obviously when Vader says that it's too late for him once again, which is, you know, kind of just like a gut blow at the time.
Yeah, this whole interaction, and I think in Empire, Vader didn't really respect him as being powerful, but and it's almost like Vader knows this conflict that's within him that you've just been talking about, and he tries to change the subject. Because then he starts looking at Luke's lightsaber and goes, you've constructed a new lightsaber. Indeed, you are powerful as the Emperor has foreseen. And he's almost trying to, like, again, Vader trying to bury Anakin and changing the subject. And so, but that's where I think he realizes that, again, yes, he is powerful. He's not the guy who you kick the butt of in Empire.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he's recognizing that, which you can see in the fight too. Luke easily handles Vader, actually.
Yeah. And I think the other thing in that same conversation is Vader says, your skills are complete. You know, and I think that's like that's important line, because once again, at this point, you don't know which way Luke's going to go, and you don't know which way Vader's going to go. So, you know, he doesn't put a name on it. He just says your skills are complete, which I think is like a pretty powerful statement.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where we'd also talked about like where he's trying to tell him the conflict within you, and he's like, well, Obi-Wan used to think as you.
Mm-hmm.
And so and it just kind of goes back to the point that we've mentioned many times, but Obi-Wan got half his mask off. Ahsoka got the other half off, but it took Luke
Mm-hmm.
sacrificing himself
Yeah.
to get to Vader to take off his mask.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he takes him up to the Death Star, and I like again, this is kind of something that the So Uncivilized video that I had mentioned kind of taps into, is the fact that it's okay that the space battle outside is somewhat similar to A New Hope's, because it's supposed to it helps you to understand that the real battle for Luke, the main character of the movie, the main battle is not out there, but it's
Mm-hmm.
in there. It's the inner, it's your personal battle that really
Mm-hmm.
is what's important. It's not really the space battle that's important in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I
You,
think
you,
that's where it really, hits the climax, because Yoda's already been telling him this, right? Yoda's already told him the times that he's wanted to leave his training and, go help his friends and things like that, that there's something bigger going on, and like you said, the Skywalker saga really, comes down to Luke's destiny, and it comes down to Anakin's destiny, ultimately. And like you're saying, there's huge implications across the galaxy from their two destinies, but it's hard when you're looking out the window and watching Lando and his strike team, and then knowing that, Leia and Han and Chewie are down on Endor, both doing what they're supposed to do, but they're both falling into a trap that the Emperor knew was going to happen all along.
You look like you had something to say there, Q.
I mean, I don't know. I was just kind of thinking that as important as that interaction between Luke, Vader, and the Emperor is, it's all kind of. I mean, if Luke was like, "All right, I'm gonna go dark side. Cool. Let's start my training. All right, let's go to the training room over here." And then Han destroys the shield. The rebels destroy the Death Star, and they all die anyway. So, I mean, the rebels were gonna win, regardless of Luke's decision. Almost.
True.
Maybe.
I mean, no, but it's just.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I guess yes and no.
Because, I mean, if you want to talk
yeah,
like
the
that,
Emperor might have escaped. They might have escaped once the shield was down if they weren't in the conflict of the fight.
I almost
the
would
Emperor
say
escaped anyway because somehow he returns.
Somehow he returned.
I will say that you can almost kind of see the difference, Q, especially if you think of like how Knights of the Republic finished, and you think of the two choices you can make there. Those choices affect everyone. They
Yeah.
And I think that kind of goes to the same, because we're basically getting into what ifs at this point. But yeah, I don't think I do think that they probably destroy the rebels, even if the Death Star is destroyed. The rebels are there, and if the Emperor lives, the Emperor was the whole point of the movie, is that he's on the Death Star, and that was their main goal, was to kill the Emperor. Not even to necessarily to destroy the Death Star, but it was to kill the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and plus, if you think about it, if you want to go down hypotheticals, they're not, even if he joins the dark side, he's going to be like, okay, there's still something happening here. What's the rule of two? And is they just going to make him fight until one of them lives?
That's kind of what the Emperor It's trying to get him to do.
Yeah.
And he does, and that works. And it works because you can see in the fight especially, at the very beginning, Luke gives in to his anger. And he's gonna strike down the Emperor. So is that Vader saving him? Is that part of his conflict? He saves Luke there from killing the Emperor. Is he protecting the Emperor, or is he protecting Luke? Because
interesting.
Because if you think about it, Anakin was in the same exact position when it came to Count Dooku. And he gave him his weapon, and he could have killed him. Well, Anakin made the choice to kill him with the manipulation of Palpatine. Now, Luke is being manipulated by Palpatine. Is Vader protecting Luke from himself, basically?
Yeah, from his own mistakes.
Yeah, that's true. Because if you think about it, another correlation is Anakin watching Windu and Palpatine fight, and he has like that kind of last split second decision of who he's going to save, who he's going to believe, who can do the most for him, and he has all of those inner feelings, and he makes that decision, which he falls to his knees and is completely defeated, realizing that at that point is where he kind of started down that path where it was too late for him. So that could also be a similar thing. He knows what, killing the Emperor, without a weapon could lead to for Luke. Yeah.
And so, but then Luke gets angry. He's heavy. His strikes are heavy with anger for the first little bit. And then they kind of separate, and Luke realizes that he's angry, and he's using that anger. And it's almost like the Emperor maybe should have kept his mouth shut a little bit, because he's like, good, use your anger. And then so he kind of basically makes Luke understand, oh crap, I am using my anger, I am getting mad, I am becoming Vader, not. And so then he lowers his weapon and only raises it when Vader attacks. And you can totally see the tone switch where he basically is only defending, and then he jumps up to the high ground, which he can only stay there for a few seconds before the lightsaber thrown, because he doesn't have the high ground like Obi-Wan has. He is the same as Vader. He's got those same conflicts going. And then, so he hides, and then Vader again manipulates him, just like we were talking about earlier with, if you won't turn, then maybe your sister will. And that gets Luke. Then he becomes angry, thinking, no, I have to destroy this person. He is bad. And that's where he uses that anger again. And that's he just wrecks Vader now. Yeah. And where Vader's literally just holding on to the railing until he cuts his hand off.
Well, see, that's kind of a thought that I was seeing when I watched it, because you can see Vader's like holding the saber up, blocking, and then Luke smacks it away. And that moment, Luke could have killed him right there. He had his defenses out of the way, and Luke could have just swung down on him. But instead, he cuts off his hand and disarms him. He makes a decision to disarm him, even when he's in that mood. Maybe he hasn't completely decided what he's going to do, but he decides that I'm not going to make this decision right here. I'm going to disarm him, and then that's when he gets that realization that this isn't, I shouldn't be killing Vader here.
Yeah.
And kind of how I talked about it then, and what Rebecca had mentioned earlier, he looks at his hand and looks at the one that Vader's missing, because it's almost like in that moment, maybe he wanted revenge. He took Vader's hand because he had taken his, and and but then he realizes like what he's doing, and then what Palpatine says is like, good. Now take your father's place at my side.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he realizes what he has just done.
Yeah.
And this is the video game moment where you make your choice.
Mm-hmm.
The video game moment where, you got to pick the light side or the dark side.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he throws his weapon away.
Mm-hmm.
Can I make that pun without realizing it?
Disarm.
He disarmed Vader.
Yeah, Rebellica. That's why I was laughing earlier.
Like, oh, that was perfect. I didn't even know it.
That's great. But yeah, so then he throws his weapon away, and like we've discussed, he understands, you know what? That was the wrong decision. And
Mm-hmm.
as we've mentioned, and so he throws his weapon and he says, I am a Jedi like my father. And that really sticks in the side of Palpatine. And Palpatine, weirdly enough, has so much faith in Anakin that Vader, that he's still loyal to him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's gonna let him just kill his son in front of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that kind of jumping back just a tiny bit, but when the Emperor is talking to Luke, he tells him that his overconfidence and faith in his friends is his weakness. And it's kind of interesting because that ends up being the Emperor's weakness as well, is his overconfidence and faith in Vader, right? And then I think there's so many amazing lines that Palpatine and the Emperor have had over all of these movies, and this is like one of my favorite ones. But when he says, I'm afraid the deflector shield will be quite operational when your friends arrive. It's so amazing. I just love that. It's just,
so
it plays
good.
out perfect
He's
with
such
him.
a good actor.
It's just like, it gets me every single time. It's just one of my favorite lines.
Yeah. But the faith, exactly what Luke is doing in this moment is putting his faith in his father, again, sacrificing himself.
Well, yeah. And one thing I wanted to bring up is even how Luke said earlier that Anakin Skywalker was his father, not Darth Vader. And he put his faith in Anakin Skywalker. And when he's being hit with Force lightning, he's saying, Father, please, Father, help me. He's not saying Vader, help me.
Yeah.
He's saying Father. And to him, Father is Anakin. So he's asking for Anakin's help in that moment.
Yeah, and he's giving the faith that if Vader's got that conflict, he'll do the right thing. And it's the ultimate, basically it's said that there's really there's not a bigger act of love than to sacrifice your life for someone you love. To take the pain for someone else, basically. Yeah. And that's what Luke is doing. And again, we talked about it. It was this choice. Vader can cling to the dark side. It's taken everything away. Look at this one person is literally willing to sacrifice his entire life. And probably, I think, at that point, even if the Death Star was going to be destroyed, they both escape and everything is going to happen. So if he just lets him die, the Empire, or the whole universe, is still in the shadow of the Empire. So it all is down to him. He is willing to sacrifice his own life to save you, to save everyone. And it's that act that is like, again, kind of what we talked about with the most Jedi thing you can do is sacrifice your own life for everyone else's.
Yeah.
And that is what Luke did, and that's what the choice that Vader makes important, because he has to choose, well, it's one more thing going to be taken away from me, or I can do the right thing. I can choose the good. I can choose the light side. And so, and Luke puts that faith in him.
Yeah, and when you think about it, there's an extra layer at this moment as well, right? Because when they were fighting, when he really got Luke going again, he senses from Luke that he has a sister, right? So he's like, your thoughts betray you, and he's like a sister, right? So there's actually that added layer too, that Anakin knows. Not only does he have one child, but he has two. He has a son and a daughter. So that has to be, running through his head as well.
And that's kind of, yeah, exactly. And that kind of goes back to when, or not back, but when, after he makes that choice, and Vader's dying words of like, all right, he made the choice, he destroyed the Emperor, he is the chosen one.
Yeah.
He's talking to Luke, and he's simply making the statement of, well, help me take this mask off, because I think he's saying that this mask is Vader and I don't want to be Vader anymore. And then he wants to look at Luke with his own eyes. And his last words to Luke are, tell your sister you were right. And I believe that means that he still thought he was good in him. That Anakin still wants, at that point, is like, no, there is good in me. I know there is. I can be good. And so tell your sister you were right.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, because basically he realizes that he was going to die believing that there was still good in him, and that obviously that ends up paying off. And I love, like, it's a little difficult to see because of the angle and the bottom of Anakin's mask still on, but I love being able to see him smile in there. Like, you can see, like, at the last moments of life, after everything that he's been through, just seeing Luke and being able to let Luke know that he was right, and then also knowing that his daughter is going to know, at the end, that he turned. It gave him, like, joy after everything is huge.
Yeah. That's so good. That moment is yeah, it just getting to, and this is kind of where everyone's always thought that Vader is the ultimate bad guy in all of cinema and everything. And the prequels touch on that, really he was just a manipulated individual who's had so much taken away from him that the only thing he has left is hate. And this is the moment where George was telling them, again, these are not stories about good guys and bad guys. These are stories about people who can make the choice to be a good guy or a bad guy.
Yeah.
And finally, Vader gave back in, becoming Anakin again, and gave in to making the correct choice. And so it's just the theme of, your choices in life matter, really. And so, Rebecca, Vader is not nearly as evil as Palpatine. No, because Palpatine in the movie is represented as the pure evil in the world. Basically, he's the representative of just evil, just pure evil.
Yeah, and it's his manipulation that gets Vader to do the evil things that he does. Anakin
Yeah.
didn't want to be an evil person. He wanted to help people. He wanted to
Yeah.
free slaves and help people around the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And his failure to do a couple of things is what Palpatine was able to manipulate into being this evil person.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you can see in that last scene where he's kind of let that go, where
Mm-hmm.
he realizes everything that's done and he can let that go,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the things I do like. I understand people complained when he showed up as a Force ghost and it was Hayden Christensen again, but
Mm-hmm.
I like that because one, that's basically who Anakin Skywalker was,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's the point. But another
Mm-hmm.
thing that I find great in this moment is if you look at Anakin in the prequels, he always wears the dark robes.
Mm-hmm.
In When he's a Force ghost at the end of the movie, he's wearing the tan light robes, the same as Obi-Wan, which
Mm-hmm.
again represents his that he's fully on the light side once again, not
Mm-hmm.
not in the prequels where it was the temptation of going to the dark, the same as uh, Luke wearing the dark robes throughout this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just it represents that. And I do find that when you see Anakin again, you're like, he's there, he is, and it's
Yeah.
just like a calming, heartwarming moment.
Mm-hmm. And because you hear so many times, that he's more machine than man, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like so like you kind of put those together, like, from that point that he gets the suit onward, it kind of does show that he's damaged, right? He's damaged in flesh, he's damaged in, missing limbs and having to use all of like these machine parts, right? To live. And so I think that this makes a lot more sense, that he goes back to who he was before he was so damaged.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because he can finally understand the damage that
Yeah.
he had done and that was caused to him, but he can also just turning to the light side right there just means that he forgave everyone as well. He
Mhm.
accepted what happened but has moved past it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
like Rebecca brought out, she loves the prequels for showing Anakin's rise and fall. I don't think it's
Mhm.
just that. The prequels, as much hate as they got, they really make the original trilogy that much better.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, it gives
So
so much more heart and meaning and impact to all of the finale of so many of these different characters. It it
Mm-hmm.
it shows, it gives like so much more heart. And I love, once again, going back to that, this is what George realized after starting. He realized that this wouldn't be complete without 1, 2, 3.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I do agree with that. And so then you kind of get the end scene there. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Ooh.
Rebecca having Hayden at the end shows that it's his internal image of himself as a Jedi. Yeah,
Mhm. I love that. Yeah, that.
exactly.
Yeah, like you putting it that way. I 100% agree with that.
Hmm. And okay, so the celebration at the end, it feels it's always heartwarming. You feel like okay, the characters like especially for Luke, this has been the most toughest test he's ever faced, and he's succeeded, and everything's gonna get better, and just the celebration, and everyone's laughing and having fun. In A New Hope, it was a more medal. It was a medal ceremony, but this is
Mhm.
a celebration. People are celebrating. I do like the new cut. You see in the background people pulling down statue of the Emperor on Coruscant, and you
Yeah.
see people celebrating on Naboo,
Mhm.
and it's a way more. The Empire is. I mean, obviously it's still there, especially if you read the books and everything. And obviously, it didn't die instantly, but you cut the head off the snake, it will die eventually. Especially when the head was, a Sith Lord keeping it all together.
Yeah.
And so,
well, yeah, he pretty much made it so that it would fall if he died because he didn't want anyone else to rule.
Yeah, that's the selfishness you see right there of the dark side of just all mine for me.
Yep.
Yeah. I love too, like I don't know why I just thought about it, but just because of Rebellica and her love for Leia. But I also love in this one when Han and Leia, they get surrounded right outside of like the shield generator room, and then Leia like pulls her clothing over to show a blaster, and he's just like, I love you, and she's like, I know.
Yes,
I
know.
love that.
We
That
skipped
was
over
such
that
amazing
part, but that yes is very the poetry, it rhymes, it's so great, and it just shows their relationship to they can also have fun and play off each other as well. And it also again kind of represents Leia and not needing someone to save her again, almost like, no, I can be the same swagger person. I can do the swag too.
Yeah. Yeah, she is just a fantastic character in everything she's been in.
Yeah, she was like, I was facing Inquisitors when I was 9, so.
Yeah, exactly. And I was playing mind games with them.
Yeah.
I wrote a note it was a comment off of the video we've talked about, the So Uncivilized video about the Luke character. And it kind of hit it right on the head, and I just wanted to share it. But it says, Luke doesn't destroy the bad guy, he saves him. He doesn't even destroy the bigger bad guy. He also doesn't get the girl in most other stories. You know, there's like the one EU. He doesn't defeat evil with violence. He defeats evil with love and compassion. And that's why Luke is a true hero. And that's why he doesn't, again, like we've touched on so many times, he doesn't just go save the day and that's it. He surrenders himself to let others save the day. And that's why he's such a different character.
Yeah, I think it's like the purity of him. Like he's an interesting hero in the fact of how pure he is, and that's why in the sequel trilogy, there is some also like drawback in all of that. Not retaliating. There's never a revenge really. As far as it goes. Like with him, and I think so. If anything, it kind of once again proves how pure he is. The reason that he went into hiding was he was about to kill somebody. And then he realized what he was about to do, and then
I'll make the just the quick argument that when you say pure like that, it kind of we doesn't think about all. Yes, he surrendered himself at the end, but he still had that conflict the entire time. And I still believe, regardless, and it just means that just because you made the right decision when you were young, you're still going to have that conflict within yourself for your entire life.
Right.
You still have to fight that. And that's what I would say that is happening, you could say, in the sequel trilogies, is Luke fighting that conflict. But you see in The Last Jedi that he finds himself and he fought the conflict, and then he fights down the army again, sacrificing himself to save people, not being the hero that destroys everyone, but the hero that saves everyone.
Yeah.
So I think we've been going on quite a bit now. I think you guys want to start.
I was going to say that last comment there in chat. Rebellica mentioned that she was devastated when Carrie Fisher died, and I do believe that that all of us were devastated at the loss of our princess.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that comment and I almost didn't want to mention it just because I didn't want to get
And on a
emotional
sad note,
and get on because
Mm-hmm.
yes, she was amazing, and I do wish I was happy that they were able to do something with Rise of Skywalker with her, and it just makes it so much worse in the end when she dies because you know the truth, and it sucks. And if you follow Mark Hamill on Twitter, you know that
Mm-hmm.
their relationship, I mean, he loves her so much. It's really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, I love the fact that, her legacy both on film and off is going to continue just because of how amazing her character was, how well she played it, but then just how amazing, she was as a person. And like one thing I'd love to see like at Star Wars Celebration was when her daughter was on. It's so amazing because, just like Leia with Padme, it's like you can see Carrie Fisher in her daughter, and it's so amazing to see
Mm-hmm.
that,
mm-hmm.
like, she's also just, such an amazing woman. And, obviously growing up with not only her seeing her on film, but also her being, her mother is such an awesome thing. And yeah, well, I know 100% that she's going to live on. And, so many people, as so many people's like hero favorite character of Star Wars.
I think what was
Mm-hmm.
too is great about Carrie is if you really think about it, if you've seen a lot of the clips, honestly, she's not much different than Princess Leia. She's a
Yeah.
bit more naughty, but or at least the way way she talks, she's more dirty and
Uh-huh.
but she's fierce,
Mhm.
just and has that spirit the same as Leia, and it's
Mhm.
just yeah, it was really heartbreaking
Yeah.
when we saw that, and because yeah,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so yeah,
Like, how
let's
can
kind
we
of.
end it on that?
I
It's
know,
hard to
right?
end it on that.
All right.
I will end it by just saying, like, I loved going over, the original trilogy with you all, watching it all over again. Each episode that we do of this, I watch it with my wife again, and we get to discuss it and talk about it before we ever go on the show. It was such a fun thing to go over this original trilogy, especially like fresh off of watching the prequel trilogy. It just proves how amazing all these films were, how they were looking to the future far beyond what other people were doing at the time. And yeah, this movie in the trilogy was just so impactful, to everything Star Wars moving forward. And yeah, I definitely my favorite of the three.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree there. I know I said Empire maybe in our first one, but after rewatching it, this one I feel has a lot of powerful moments.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I also wanted to say we didn't really touch much on this one about like the tech that went into it and everything,
Yeah.
but what we're gonna do for next week's podcast is the Light and Magic show comes out this week, and so we're gonna watch that and we're gonna discuss some things about that because the stories that they did, I mean, George Lucas had to basically invent a company in order to make the special effects that he wanted for these movies, and
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things that Star Wars has always been known for is moving movie technology forward, how you
Yeah.
make movies and everything. And so I think it'll be really interesting to get to see the story of ILM and everything that went into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep,
Um,
for sure.
Again, if you guys want to continue the discussion, go ahead and join our Discord there. We have lots of good members, good conversation, just a fun environment where you can share your theories and questions and any and memes, especially memes. You know, Star Wars is good for its memes.
We love good jokes.
And so yeah, join the Discord there. And also, if you want to support us, you can join our Patreon. We all have our own stuff as well. Our Twitter tags are on the screen, but you can also get the direct link in the description there. And I also have a Twitch. Quinton has a Twitch, and we all have our own YouTube channels. Josiah's got Hezekiah's channel there. If you guys want to see anything else we did, I'm just gonna throw a shameless plug in there. I did a playthrough of the first part of Fallen Order on my channel just the other day, and I'm gonna continue to do playthroughs. And I'll be doing them live on Twitch, but then I'll also post videos to the YouTube if you want to watch them later.
Nice. Yeah, and I just want to say a big shout out, obviously, as always, to everybody in the chat. Makes it so much more fun for us to play off all of your guys' opinions too. So yeah, big shout out to Sensei, Seth, Rebellica, and our Patreon member Bruce Togo Bap. Huge thank you to you for supporting us always. And yeah, thanks everybody for joining. And it always makes it so much more fun.
Just Star Wars was in the chat a couple times as well.
Star Wars,
yeah, just
Seth,
Star Wars.
Send it O'Reilly.
Send it O'Reilly.
Yeah, big thanks to everybody for showing up. Makes it so much more fun to be able to talk about all this stuff with you guys.
We like to play off your ideas too, because we know everyone's got their own headcanon and ideas and the way they see things, and that's one thing we like here is to take each other's ideas and kind of play off each other, and we can think of different ideas. You know, sometimes we speculate maybe a little too much, but it's always fun.
Yep.
As always, what does Obi-Wan say? Always say?
He says goodbye by saying, "May the Force be with you."
Always.
Always.